2013 Le Mans will be bringing you two specials devoted to behind-the-scenes action at the world's oldest sports car endurance race.
There was a collective sigh of relief when Minister Rob Davies announced last week that the much derided business licensing bill is to be redrafted. Of course, most South Africans want it done away with entirely, but a substantial rework may be the next best thing. Joining me now to share their views on how a redraft could work with other legislation is Faith Ngwenya, Technical and Standards Executive at the South African Institute of Professional Accountants. Faith, thanks very much for coming through.
You're welcome.
Faith, you believe that any redraft needs to effectively comply with SARS's efforts to bring more people into the tax net. Why do you think that's such an important consideration?
If any bill that is being passed will have an impact on the businesses and their profits, then obviously it has to be aligned to the Registration Act, because we do not see the point of having a new registration that does not necessarily talk to what the Tax Administration Act is obviously requiring of businesses.
What is the, what are businesses obliged to do under the Tax Administration Act, and what is the purpose really of that act?
Yeah, I think it's more the purpose of the act. It was one of the purposes is that it actually has to streamline and make the registration processes to be as seamless as possible. Okay. So under one roof you will have all your registration. And unfortunately now we have another bill that's coming up that actually requires businesses, the same businesses that are registered with SARS, to be registered again.
So you're saying there's just an immense duplication effectively?
It's more red tape. We already have a lot of that in South Africa. We are a highly regulated country as far as businesses, particularly if one is looking at the small and medium-sized enterprises, because those are really the creators of employment. And if we now require them to adhere to a lot of red tape, that will deter their progress. Already in South Africa, we obviously are seeing a lot of reliance on the social security system. So the SMEs, the bill draws in hawkers. The business licensing bill draws in hawkers for registration purposes. If you are not registered, you obviously cannot trade.
If, as a hawker at the moment, you don't have to get registration, and how do you fit under SARS's Tax Administration Act at present? Are you exempt?
Yeah, most of them would have in any case been under the threshold, but just to answer your question on whether they are required to be registered, at the moment the current Business Act bill, it requires only hawkers that are dealing in food to be registered because of their health and environmental requirements. But other hawkers are not required to be registered. And under the new bill, it actually requires every business, including all hawkers, to be registered. Now, if one were to look at the input that these hawkers are making to obviously have a source of income rather than relying on the social security system, that's being taken away.
Is it just businesses that are involved in the food sector that need to be registered at the moment, or are there other companies?
There are other companies at the moment. It will be your food and environmental. It will also be the entertainment sector. So those are the businesses that are required to be registered under. Obviously, we have our formal business where you have to be registered with the CIPC, the old CIPRO.
Yeah.
So those will obviously stay. But the problem now is we have got the new ones that need to be registered within the business licenses bill.
Faith, you talk about joined up government. In other words, how I interpret that is government departments actually talking to each other and legislation that is sort of seamless between government departments. Is this an example of exactly disjointed government work?
As much as it, one will actually believe that there was coordination, consultation when drafting. However, we are seeing a lot of bills coming out now where you will find that the requirements of the bill are duplicating what has already been required by the other bill. As I've mentioned, that the registrations, it's meant to be seamless, but now we have another entity where you will be required to obviously register. So is it talking to each other?
Yeah, and presumably in SARS's efforts to draw people into the tax net, this could have the very opposite effect, where people say it's just too much administrative hassle. I'm kind of going to do my own thing and thereby negating the work that SARS has done over the last few years.
Also, I think with at the moment the bill proposes that the SAPS will obviously be the people that can seize the products of those people that will not be registered, and we all know the corruption that actually exists there. Are we just opening another net for corruption in the country? And on the other hand, we have got, yes, when you are talking about businesses that are being tax compliant, and now they had to be registered with SARS, and I promise you the registration process with SARS is quite tedious. And the registration with obviously the other systems like your CIPC is also another tedious process. And over and above that, you now have to be registered with in terms of the business bill. So,
Faith, would you actually like to see this bill scrapped entirely, or do you think a severe redrafting, taking into account what organisations such as yourself, Saki, Busa, etc., have said? Do you think if they take all the concerns, it'll be a valuable piece of legislation, or do you think it's actually best done away with entirely?
It is a valuable piece of legislation. However, let it not be a bill that requires all businesses to be registered. Limit and categorize the types of businesses that needs registration, and in that way it will achieve the objectives that they are seeking to achieve with the bill. But the other problem that we have, we had with the New Companies Act, is the entire administration of these registrations. It's fairly easy whilst the bill is being drafted to say it will be seamless. But we have seen the endless problems that we have every time there is a new piece of legislation that gets promulgated, that the implementation of that becomes a huge problem and a challenge. And that's exactly what's going to happen. We are going to have businesses that have no licenses and they can't trade. What does that the fiscus of the country?
Yeah, and you do mention in the context of where we are as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, we have slipped down the tables.
Yes.
South Africa needs to have entrepreneurs to do something about its employment problem, and you're saying that this bill is just going to make it more and more difficult for entrepreneurs to get a head start.
Yeah, a 2.6 drop between 2010 and 2012. It's a huge drop. And we still are feeling obviously the aftermath of the credit crisis, and just increasing red tape is frustrating business even more.
Are you going to be making any submissions? Is one allowed to under this new process that Davies announced last week?
The public commentary process has already closed. We did make our submission on the bill, and we are now just waiting for the public. Sorry, it's actually the commentary period is over.
Yep.
So we are waiting for the public hearings, obviously, to the Trade and Industry Portfolio Committee. When that happens, we'll definitely go and present you.
Okay. Well, we're hopeful that maybe sense will prevail.
Absolutely.
Faith, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
That's Faith Ngwenya. She's Technical and Standards Executive at the South African Institute of Professional Accountants.
Growing a business is like being on a journey. You know where you want to go, but you don't always know the best way to get there. One thing's for sure, it's never easy. On any journey you need the right partner, who takes the time to understand where you come from, where you're headed, and what it takes to get there. A partner who will walk with you no matter what. That's why I'm with Nedbank. They know it's not just me and my business on this journey. It's also my employees, my business partners, my family, and my